Love me a little Clash. Yes, I was feeling rather English yesterday, so I think that carried over in today's show, Jen. Make sure my mic volume up. So of course I'm wearing the shirt you got me. See, speaking of things English, the great heraldry of the beast's name and uh, English origin, but no one sings it better than a bunch of rough boys from England like the Clash. Bruce Springsteen loves that song and he covers it, I think, at every concert. And he brings a lot of heart to it. I kind of like some of Springsteen stuff, but when he sings that cover for London Calling, he really brings it. I got to give him credit for that, but it's better to hear those I don't know what you would call that particular, just I don't know, I hate to say commoner accent in London. Just sounds better if you can detect that accent when singing a song like London Calling, which is probably one of the most I don't know, but it was just crazy. A band like the Clash, which was mostly like Joe Strummer is the leader of the band, of course, the singer of the band, and he was mostly influenced by the Beach Boys, which was interesting to be influenced by such an American sounding band when you sound so English to be influenced by the Beach Boys. Of course, I'm a big Beach Boys fan. No secret there. But yeah, maybe a Cockney. Isn't a Cockney more of maybe not a Welsh, but maybe it is more of a Cockney. But I think I don't know what Joe's was, but I like it when you can detect that English accent in the singing because there's so many English singers you can't tell are English when they're singing, but obviously when Joe sings, you can tell he has that British influence. Even though he was born in Turkey, his father was English, his mother was Scottish. I'm not sure when he came made it over to England, but I think he was 8 or 9 years old. I don't know the whole story on Joe. He died around 51 of a heart ailment that was undetected. So it was kind of a shock. But I give Bruce Springsteen some credit. He sings that song and he brings it with a lot of heart. Connection between Zodiac and Stockton. I'm trying to remember. Connection between Stockton. I keep trying to remember. I hope I didn't misspeak when I said Stockton. I don't know. I'm gonna have to think on that one. Okay, I'm not sure. Of course, I don't know if Sepper's hiding out, but I saw. Hey, Richard, there's Sepper. Yeah, I played Donovan or Hurdy Gurdy man for Allen. Yeah, Sepper, of course, Sepper. I had a feeling you might have turned up a little earlier under the guise of someone else. I'm not going to name any names, but people do remember when Don Cheney showed up to the show live. And, I kind of thought of you when I saw that right there. Carrie and Allen testing, Zodcast calling. Karen, of course, I followed up with, hi, Karen. Would you be familiar with the Santa Rosa area by any chance? So, Karen, if that's you, we'll start with an easy one. I know there's at least one person, I won't say his name, who knows this answer, but what is your maiden name? We'll start with that. If this is the Karen Allen, of course, let's start with your maiden name, and then then I got a couple more little testers, but I know there is at least one or two people in the group. Hey, Jen. Hey, Mike. We are all cogitating. Of course, in the news, Jimmy Carter passed away today. So rest in peace, President Carter. I think, Jen, you might remember this. We were in Vail, Colorado. Don't remember the year, but we were young. And Jimmy Carter was there outside the hotel. I think this was in, that was either Snowmass or Vail. I don't remember. And Jimmy Carter was out there. I don't remember really any Secret Service with him, but it could have looked like just one of his party or something. It could have been a Secret Service guy. Just, if the president's going to go skiing, I guess you're going to go skiing with him if you're Secret Service. How else are you going to keep up with him? But I don't know how well the guy could ski, but he had his ski clothes on. He didn't have his skis on, but it was outside like the lodge, so to speak. And I can kind of remember my dad saying, "Hello, Mr. President," or something like that. But maybe you remember, Jen. I don't know. It's a fuzzy memory. Obviously, I remember when he asked John Denver what time it was, because John Denver was hanging out roughly the same area, but maybe a different year. And my dad was like, "Do you know what time it is?" And I looked back, and my dad was asking John Denver what time it was. Of course, the singer. And that was kind of weird. But I remember Jimmy Carter being there, and I might have said, "Hi, Mr. President," but he didn't. I don't think he acknowledged me, or who could blame him. But I don't think Carter was all bad. I mean, he did a lot of good with Habitat for Humanity, and I think he got an award for that. Doing all the charitable work that President Carter did. Does anyone really know what time it is? I don't know. I don't even know what time it is now, really, to be honest. So if Karen Allen's maiden name pops up, we'll go from there. That'd be fun because I'm sure a lot of you guys remember when Don showed up to the show, and we didn't even use the spirit box when Don Cheney showed up. Remember when Don showed up out of nowhere? We got to ask him questions, and it was pretty enlightening. I think Don did pretty well, despite being deceased. He was keeping up pretty well. English documentaries about W2s are the best, but their accents are annoying. It depends on the person for me. Like Tim Wallace, I don't know, Tim, if you're watching, I love Tim's accent. Tim has what I call my favorite. I love Tim's accent. It's the best. If you heard him on the Cooper Vortex, my buddy Tim Wallace, I love Tim's accent. He just has the best accent. Kenny, I like Kenny's accent too. Of course, friends that I have over in England, but I love Tim. Tim's just got the perfect English accent. World War II. Yeah, that's what I thought you meant, Brad. Yeah. Yeah, some of them are so hardcore that you can't even understand it. I remember sitting by a guy on a plane that was from Scotland, and I swear I could not hardly understand a word this guy said. And I mean, I know it was English, but he's speaking English, but I know some Scottish guys over here that work in the oil industry, and they're like not too far removed from Scotland, maybe 4 or 5 years, but I sat on a plane by this guy from Scotland. Maybe it was a different area of Scotland, but I could only understand maybe 1 out of every 5 words of this dude. It was a little crazy. Now we got Lee. Lee's on board. Now we got Karen Allen and Lee. So we're bringing it here on the Zodcast. Where else are you going to find big names in this case? Jen, it would have to be Vale. I don't remember that though. Maybe our other sister will remember, but I think Jimmy Carter was outside that lodge in Vale. Maybe it was Vale, but I remember the deal with John Denver, and then another one, Carter was there. I remember looking back and someone saying, Mr. President. I'm pretty sure I got that right, but it was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Maybe Julie remembers. I don't know, but I'm almost sure that was Carter. I need to do more on Melvin Belli because according to Sepper, a Belli connection, and he's all in on Cheney. It says Melvin Belli grew up in Stockton. Grace Smith worked for the Stockton paper just before going to San Francisco. Morford uncovered a possible Z letter found at Stockton's Paradise Point Marina in a bottle. That's interesting. Of course, anything with Paradise always gets your attention in this case. Yes, disturbed spirit. I felt like he said, it was a symptom. I think he said something like Don Cheney, of course, said it was a symptom. He thought Allen was suffering from a symptom of a disturbed spirit, if I have that correct. And I'm trying to toggle, of course, between many, many things. Dennis, I've always had a thing for girls with a Minnesota. Is that Minnesota? Is that right? Like Fargo? Of course, Fargo's in what? Fargo's in North Dakota, right? But it's kind of similar to a Minnesota accent. Call you weird. We're all weird. I'm not sure what a straight up Minnesota accent would be. I definitely know a Michigan accent when I hear it because it's the R's. The R's are like armed guards. I got a good buddy. His name is Dennis as well. Not this Dennis, but another Dennis who lives in northern Michigan, and he always has that R's. Like I can, a Michigander I can pick out from a long far, far away. I can pick out a Michigander because of the R's. And of course, with Canadians, it's always the outs, the OUs, like they say out and house. I mean, I know when you watch old SCTV, you think they're going to say stuff like, a lot, like Bob and Doug, but they really don't. I've never seen many Canadians that run into saying a lot, but they do say house and out. So they're pretty easy to pick out because of that particular point of their accent, which just causes me to cogitate. But anyway, let me kick things off a little bit. And if you have not already done so, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to our fair channel here, because this is the Zodcast calling. But there was a little fine from Reddit, which I give Reddit a hard time once in a while, just because there's a few guys on there that are, I guess, not the brightest, but there's some that are. There's some pretty good stuff on Reddit that comes up from time to time. Let me pull this back out so I don't miss a comment. But somebody on Reddit was able to finally run down the source of the second skeleton from the Halloween card. And we talked about this a long time ago. I had spoken to a guy who felt that he thought that it was an artist and the artist free-handed it. I have another good friend that that he was visiting some relatives for Christmas that I told today they didn't know about this yet. And he usually would find out before me and say, "Hey, Drew, do you know they found the source of the second skeleton for the Zodiac's Halloween card?" And it was heavily speculated that the Zodiac just found that in a pack of something different. But now we know from this guy from Reddit, we'll see what he goes by, that the second skeleton comes from this card where it says no bones about it. But this is, has the red mask already on. So obviously Zodiac didn't add that. All he did was cut this out and add it to his separate Halloween card. So he did not freehand it. So that's a blow against Zodiac as an artist, I think, is what you would obtain from that. And I never really weighed in one way or the other, but obviously he didn't freehand that skeleton. He did get it from another source, which is this card, which says no bones about it. I need to put that up. Maybe I'll go to the site so that guy can get credit, but I've never heard of him. He's just going under a handle. But go to Reddit and look for it if you want, and it will talk about this finding, which is nice to finally nail it down. And I also appreciate our good friend Drewzer, who let me know that the newspapers at the time believed that this was just a cutout, because it says it was in the papers at the time, but it's awesome to finally see it. I agree. Plus the pumpkin, of course, because you see where I think he got the pumpkin from the same card. It said the Zodiac apparently, I don't know when this came out, but it was, I think, during the time of the mailing of the original Halloween card. It said the Zodiac apparently mailed a standard child's Halloween card on which he had pasted portions of other cards and drawn exaggerated pictures of peering eyes. So the newspaper even had it right back in the day. So mystery put to bed on that. The Zodiac Killer did not freehand that second skeleton found in Ross said he's still looking it over. That he did not freehand that skeleton. He just cut it out. That one right there. If you saw that on Reddit, Ross, give me the guy's name again who posted that. I think it's under his whatever his call name is. I've never heard of the dude, but shout out to him, big time. Maybe I'll even look it up. Good job by him by finding that, because it's a small mystery put to bed that the Zodiac didn't freehand it. In fact, somebody left a comment that he didn't think the Zodiac had a whole lot of artistic ability. Of course, I think it's Don, who could obviously draft and had drafting skills, but maybe wasn't really an artist like Robert Graysmith was, a political cartoonist. That's how he got his start. But let me see where this dude is. Definitely deserves some credit, even if it's under his Reddit call sign. Is anything working today? No. Nothing has worked since Christmas. Nothing was working before Christmas. Oh, the pumpkin comes from that says Happy Halloween. I like you. That's I think from a separate card, or the inside of this card. Let me pull that up because I don't think I have that picture. Let me go back. See if I can get this up. Let me get rid of YouTube. Go back. Pull that up, because this didn't get in the slides. My bad, because that card did have the pumpkin in it, like Drewzer stated. In fact, let me just go to Reddit. Screw it. Wouldn't that be easier than going through all these machinations to just go straight to Reddit? Okay, let's go. Oh, there was something else interesting on Reddit too, but I don't know if I'll bring that up unless somebody really wants me to. All right, where is it? Man, this thread can't be that long. Let's type in Halloween. Here's Johnny. I wonder what made me think of that. Okay, let me make sure I can share the screen. And finally track down. There it is. Y'all should be able to see this now. It's from Small Orbit. Finally tracked down Halloween card skeleton from inside. I got a bit hung up on analyze the inside of the Halloween card. I won't read all this, I swear. The skeleton in there just obviously seems out of place stylistically. It seems way more handmade than other cards of this period as far as my research went. And I almost concluded it was hand drawn, which I've seen some people say. I isolated and removed the borders around it and could see a case for that. And then he winds up being the guy that finds the source of it, which was just a cutout from this. It says no bones about it. He's got the measuring stick on it. Looks like it's about 6 inches because he starts measuring it an inch. And then somebody shows a picture of the dripping pin card. I thought I saw a picture. Okay. Duh. Let me go over here. Here is the back of the card. Hopefully everybody can see this. I'm sharing this correctly. No bones about it. And there's the pumpkin. So I don't know. I don't know if this is a different card or the same one, but I think the pumpkin that was cut out. Obviously the little girl was not in there, but I think that's the pumpkin that Druser was talking about. So pretty cool. Pretty cool that the guy found that. Let me put that back up. Pretty cool that he found the source of the second skeleton. Hello, how are you? Small Orbit. Yes, thanks, Jen. Hi, Mindless. Robert says, did they release all the tapes of Blaine interviews with Geik? I don't know. I have never heard any of them. Of course, Blaine passed away, about a year and a half ago? I never heard any of those tapes that if they had Blaine recorded talking to Gykowski. I think Blaine used to either work for Geik. I know he knew him, but I don't think anyone disputes that Blaine knew Geik. I don't think that's ever been disputed, to my knowledge. William, how convenient that the real Zodiac Killer tried copying Lee's way of writing to implicate him, then sending secret pals and send it to Cheney's old classmate. True. I agree with you, William. I'm not gonna put up a fight there. Yes, your secret pal from Bakersfield Junior College. Hey, Plate C. No, I'd like to hear those tapes as well. Yeah, how do you beat Bob and Doug? I mean, pound for pound, SCTV was. You really can't compare it to Saturday Night Live because SCTV was actually funny. I mean, Saturday Night Live was funny, and in the original, not ready for primetime players were great, and then you had Chris Farley, who was great. But other than that, Saturday Night Live has not been funny for so long. It's not even. It's Saturday Night Live has been breaking the first rule of comedy for at least 30 years. Did the cards come from the same pack or individually? Good question, Lee. I don't know. I don't think he says in the thread, but if you go there, maybe he'll say Small Orbit will either answer that or he might mention that in his posting about where he found that. But good job by Small Orbit, whoever you are. Monster Chiller Horror Theater. Yes. No doubt. Hey, Darnell. But yeah, here is the envelope, of course, that the Halloween card came in, and it has the Apollo moon landing stamps. I think Drewser's doing a lot of research into that, like all things letters, which is great. The Sorry No Cipher reminds me of that board game, the way it's written crossways like that. I can't remember the name of that board game that was made in Bakersfield. but there's a lot going on with the Apollo missions with the stamps. Of course, Paul Averly, the famous Averly, and then there's the line under the LAV, and the line just happens to be over the CH. Really? Maybe just a coinkydink that the line is over the CH. This is, of course, the original Halloween card was green. I think Paul Brookbanks, if you all remember that name, who did a lot of work on the Halloween card. He was also the guy that had Bukowski. Like, what was the guy's name? His suspect was what was the guy's name? Someone remind me. The guy from prison. The guy from prison. I want to say Bukowski, but I think I'm getting that wrong. I've been doing this way too long. Dang it. Now it's going to bother me. Who was the guy suspect? The guy was like, they would have had to have, like, when he got out of prison, he would have had to have driven at 400 miles an hour through 8 states to have gotten to Lake Herman Road on time or something. And he couldn't have done Riverside, which I don't think Riverside was Zodiac. Oh, what was the guy's name? Well, it's not the, I don't know. I don't know where the original card is. That's a good question. I don't know what happened to the original card. I don't know if I've ever, there's a picture of it. I think it is in San Francisco PD evidence, because there's a documentary that shows a picture of the original card, this is an exact replica of it, other than what Zodiac wrote here using the Tim Holt language, of course, but it is green. The background is green. But there's a video, an old Zodiac documentary. I mean, old, when I'm saying old, I mean like 25 years old or so. I can't remember which one, but it shows the actual card in evidence, and you can see that it was green. So I think SFP has it. No, not Post. Shoot. What was that guy's freaking name? I'm killing me. What was it? Darn it. I keep wanting to say Bukowski. Who's Bukowski? Oh man, he was in Deer Lodge prison. The suspect that was actually in Deer Lodge, other than Ed Edwards. Not Ed Edwards, the other guy that came out of Deer Lodge. Come on, you guys know. Donald Lee Booyock, thank you. Anna comes out. Gets my brain from being locked. Yes, Donald Lee Booyock. It's pronounced Booyock. Prisoner from Deer Lodge that has been suggested for Zodiac. Yes, Sever got it too. You're a little later than Anna. Anna gets the prize. Sapir, Donald Lee Booyock from Deer Lodge. Yeah, Booyock. I think he had a few things going for him, and it was Brooks. Brooks was the guy that was the Booyock champion, as it were. But he did quite a bit of good work on the Halloween card. Despite Booyock not really making high grade as a Zodiac suspect, he did some good work on the Halloween card. Mike, why do you think the N in the knife is backwards? I don't know. That's a good question, though. I think he did everything for a reason, though. There's no doubt. Was everyone called Lee? I don't know. There was a lot of Lees going around, Lee. Brian Bullock. I don't know. Is that a football player? I don't even know. Of course, you had Donald Lee, Cheney, Arthur Lee, Allen. I think there was some other Lees in there. What about Post? You mean Gary Post? I think it's P-O-S-T. I think there's an E on it. I think it's P-O-S-T-E, if I'm not sure. I think Gary Post is probably in the bottom 3 of suspects, of Zodiac Killer suspects. Obviously, I have someone, so discount it as much as you need to, because I already have a suspect combination. But I think that he's literally at the bottom of the stack. I think he's terrible. And of course, he comes from the Case Breakers, who famously had D.B. Cooper suspect named Robert Rackstraw, who they somehow got into 2 major documentaries. So credit to them. But Rackstraw biggest blow as Cooper was, of course, he was just too young. And not only that, he looked young. He didn't have the Richard Floyd McCoy excuse of, well, he looks older than his age. Robert Rackstraw, there was a picture taken of Robert Rackstraw 3 weeks before the hijacking, at Disneyland. He took his family to Disneyland, which was probably the nicest thing he ever did in his life because he was really a mean guy. But brought the same guys that brought you Post as a Zodiac suspect brought you Robert Rackstraw as a Cooper suspect, even though the FBI had already investigated Cooper way before Colbert latched onto him as a Cooper suspect. But man, he had a picture of him 3 weeks before the hijacking, and he looks every bit of 27 years old that he was. And you always had good stuff. If the backwards N is in, I can't even say that word. You would have to put up a word I can't pronounce. I don't even want to try to see what Cyrillic. And if you read left to right in the alphabet, we could have the initials ISR. You once thought that could mean something. Backwards N equals I. What's Cyrillic? Is that some kind of language? Richard Hoffman looks like the front page of Mad Magazine when he was young. I haven't seen that. Well, I've seen pictures of Hoffman during his police officer days, but I don't think I've seen anything earlier, like not even high school, which shouldn't be too hard to find in a high school yearbook. But I don't recall seeing any pictures of Hoffman. But man, if dating Darlene Ferrin makes you a suspect in this case, we're gonna have to make a lot bigger room for more Zodiac Killer suspects. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to put her down. It's just the way. If you want to go down that road, it's gonna be never ending. If you want to go down that road, I mean, I'm sure he knew her, but the case for him overall is fairly weak. If those tapes come out, I want to see them. Yeah, I could not remember Donald Lee Booyar, but yeah, he got out of Deer Lodge, and I remember that he would have had to have really immediately left prison to try to have made Lake Herman Road. Like why would he want to just go over 4 or 5 states to start a crime thing? Geika Zodiac, just coincidence with the cipher, no more. Yeah, Geik does show up on one of the ciphers. Was obviously gay, hardly the type hunting teens. Yeah, that's true. And that's another reason why I could never really grasp onto why he would have this so-called obsession with Darlene Ferrin. Why would Geik, as a gay man, have this obsession with Darlene? I mean, she wasn't like some boom, Marilyn Monroe type figure that a gay guy would love the fashion of or whatever. She was, pretty, she was a plain Jane Vallejo waitress, and I'm not trying to put her down. That's just what she was. But I don't know why Richard Gaikowski would have any type of fascination with her. And I know people try to make a case for Guy by claiming that he must have known her, but there is zero evidence that Richard Gaikowski knew her. Even with the Albany connection, there's not one shred of evidence those two knew each other. And it's almost no way that Alan and Cheney didn't know her, going to that IHOP that's literally a stone's throw from Alan's house. I mean, if I had a IHOP that close, I'm sure I would have known it. I know everybody in that restaurant if I lived as close to an IHOP restaurant as Arthur Lee Allen did, because Allen could have rolled over there 3 times and made it into a parking lot. He lived so close to that IHOP where she worked. Not at the time she was murdered. She was already working at Terry's, and I think her husband, Dean, was still working at that IHOP. But ain't no way that Alan Cheney didn't know her on a cursory basis just from the year she was working at the IHOP before she went over to Terry's Waffle House. Cipher, no more. Geik was obviously gay. It's script. Oh, Slavonic script, or simply Slavic script, is a writing system used for various languages across Eurasia. Interesting. Thank you. Post is better than Geik. Ouch. Shots fired. Post is better than Geik. Shots fired across the bow. There's the inside of the card. $14. I mean, there's a million different. I did steal this from Richard Grinnell, ZodiacCyphers.com. So go out and check that website. That's my payment for this, Richard. Check out that great website, ZodiacCyphers.com. Has everything you would ever want to read about this case on that website, and that is obviously the best Zodiac Killer website by far. Is Richard Grinnell's Fine website, where that was stolen from. But the 14, I mean, that's been debated. Is there 14 victims? There's a million different things that people think that could stand for. I always thought it might be what they call, I think, the Golden 14 by Gilbert and Sullivan was the all their works called. I think it was nicknamed the Golden 14, which I think that could be what Zodiac was trying to say, which was, of course, we know he liked the Mikado. He liked a lot of things that were English. So going back to the theme of the show, the Zodcast calling all things English. When we did the documentary, I was told by the guys that did the forensic analysis on the letters that they believed that the Zodiac read a book called The Devil's Charter by Barnes Barnaby, if I have that correct. So you might want to look that book up. It's pretty old. I think it's kind of like an anti-Catholic type thing. It's like kind of critical of the Pope, but it's called The Devil's Charter. And if you look up, there's old English words in it, like paradise spelled with the dice spelling and different things. But I don't remember why. And I don't even know if that came out in the documentary, but they told me, or Andrew told me, who made that documentary, that those guys were pretty certain that the Zodiac Killer read the play The Devil's Charter by Barnes Barnaby. Of course, that was English too, like Gilbert and Sullivan and so many other things that the Zodiac obviously liked that were English, which I think he was inspired by Agatha Christie, who, of course, was English herself. You heard Darlene laughed at Geik when he slept with her, think he could perform in bed, probably made him want to get back at her. I don't know if you're making a joke, Robert, but I'm pretty sure that would not be true if you saw that on the internet. I'm pretty confident that those two never met. Alan and Cheney had to have known Darlene. Makes more sense. Yeah, there's no way. He lives so close to the IHOP, and I think she worked there at least a year, if not longer, as a waitress before she went over to Terry's. I don't know what prompted her to move. Maybe she was already not getting along with Dean. I think Dean was still a cook there at the IHOP. Patty, the skeleton's feet are touching on the Zodiac's card, but they're not touching on the other card. I wonder if that means anything. Good observation. I don't know. I don't know, because I think this is a recreation done by Druser, but you can tell that the legs are crossed here over the Happy Halloween. The boo, I remember he apparently wanted the booyah to come into that a little bit. Yeah, that's true. Yes. No HM Voight, remember, but yes, he owns all the patents, of course. That V-shaped sign is probably from the Fox Theater in Bakersfield. Yeah, I forgot to bring that up. You did send me that. Let me see if I can find a picture of it, but it won't be as good as maybe the one you sent me. But Sapir showed me the little designs on the side of the Fox Theater in Bakersfield that looks like what I call the Zodiac VH logo, kind of shortening that for Van Halen. Let me see if I can find it. And I can show you what he's talking about. I did mean to bring that up. I totally forgot. In the hail of the holidays, because there's some photos that show it better than others, but it does resemble that symbol that the Zodiac used on the Halloween card. I don't know if it'll come up on this one. I'm just digging around randomly for that. I know it's on the outside of the building. It says Fox, where it's turning, and then it's after the Fox, where you would see those little logos. I'll have to find it. I know you sent me one that was decent. I can't find a good photo. Maybe because I'm not in a good browser. And they may have removed them at some point, but I think they were definitely on there in the 50s. I can't remember when they built that theater. I think it was in the 40s. Maybe earlier. I'm not sure when they built the Fox in Bakersfield, but yeah, that was the obviously the movie theater to go to. There was more. There was at least 3 major movie theaters in Bakersfield, but that was the main one. That was the place to be. and they had a lot of that stuff for kids with the the characters dressing up like Red Ryder and Little Beaver. So who brought up Red Ryder and Little Beaver? I think somebody told me that Robert Blake played Little Beaver. Somebody see if that's true or not. Somebody either emailed me that or dropped it. Oh, hey, wait, I think I may have found it separate. Hold on. I think it's shoot, I lost it. I just saw it and I think it pulled it from Pinterest. But you could see those little squiggly. Man, I had it and lost it. Darn it. But it looks just like. He's probably emailing it to me like, no, check the email. That's like something Ryan Burns would do. Dude, I'm emailing it to you now. I had it and lost it. Crud. I'll have to look for it. But yeah, it looks like just like it. Frank Morris. I love Frank Morris. I don't think he's Zodiac or DB Cooper, but I love Frank Morris. I think Frank Morris made it out. I can tell you that. I definitely think. No, I don't think the card was hand drawn. I think it looked like it. Now we know that the skeleton definitely wasn't hand drawn. We know for sure now that both that one skeleton came with a card and the other skeleton was cut out from another card. Corky's a lot better looking because I saw who from a close distance, and I'd probably vote for Corky. Yeah, I'd say Corky's better looking. Thank you for looking that up, Patty. According to Al or AI, you mean just AI? I was like Al. AI. Robert Blake played Little Beaver in the Red Ryder Western series from 1944 to 1947. Blake appeared in 23 of the movies. So yeah, whoever told me that, thank you, because I either didn't ever know that or forgot it. But I'm going to lean towards. I'm going to be honest and say I probably never knew it. But Robert Blake played Little Beaver, which could come in somewhere down the road. So people keep that in mind that Robert Blake, the actor, did play Little Beaver, which was the sidekick to Red Ryder. There was only one Halloween card sent to Paul Avery, but they did make copies of it. I remember asking his daughter, Paul Avery's daughter, who I know, if she ever handled the authentic Halloween card because it was sent to her dad. And she said no, but they made several copies of it at the time. I guess, Xerox type copies of it when it was sent to her dad. And that she remembers having a copy of it. Of course, she didn't keep it because I'd love to have like a first generation copy of the thing. But I don't know what happened to it after they sent it to Paul. I think the police collected it maybe even that day. And as far as I know from that one documentary having it, and Drewser probably knows, I would assume that the San Francisco PD still has it, which is scary because God knows how they treat their evidence, of course. What was the deal with Robert Blake's? Remind me of that. I can't remember what happened with Blake. I mean, and didn't he? I can't remember who he killed, but it was like, I don't know. He had some sort of defense. I don't remember. It's been so long. But that is interesting that someone reminded me that Robert Blake played Little Beaver. Don Cheney was not social, not well. I think he was sort of social on some levels. If Karen, if you're still here, you would know the answer to that a lot better than I would. Karen, if you're still out there, you would be the person to answer this question better than anyone. But I think he was social, like on a level with his wife. They would like trade recipes and stuff. Like, Arthur Lee Allen was really into cooking, and he would write a lot of recipes. And of course, he would type funny names for the different ingredients in the recipe, like phonetically, like the Zodiac did, which that's, think about that Allen was known to misspell words phonetically for comedic effect before the Zodiac Killer's reign. I mean, just think of the sheer odds of that alone on Allen really make it tough to take any target off of Arthur Lee Allen in this case. It really does. Robert Blake murdered his girlfriend. That's right. It was his girlfriend. He was very reclusive later in life. I will tell you that. Don Cheney was very much a recluse later. After his family moved to the East Coast and he stayed on the West Coast, mainly in Benton City, Washington, and his family was mostly in either Connecticut or Vermont. I think daughter in Vermont, son in Connecticut, ex-wife in Connecticut, East Lyme, Connecticut area, but very much a recluse at that time. And I'm talking about late 80s, 90s, for sure a recluse, other than coming forward and doing His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen, which is that, and of course the interview he did with TV, which he drove at least three, I don't know how many miles, but it was a pretty long distance. If you want to, someone wants to chart that from Benton City, Washington to there's going memories kicking in to what's the name? I cannot remember where that interview took place. Somewhere near the border of Washington State, but it was a pretty good ride. Yes, he did. He did try to be social. He killed was it his ex-wife or his girlfriend? I know now we're talking about Robert Blake. But yeah, I would definitely call him a recluse, especially when he was in Benton City. No doubt. I did actually talk to a guy that knew him in Benton City. Very reclusive in the Benton City years. I can't put the exact, where he was living when he died, and so it was starting to get rusty. 2009. So I think he was living in Benton City for at least 20 years. Very reclusive while living in Benton City, other than maybe doing the interview with TV, and then of course doing His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen. He was supposed to do John Walsh's show, America's Most Wanted, but he declined it. They tried to get Cheney. I don't know if America's Most Wanted ever did a Zodiac episode. If somebody knows, tell me. I don't think they did, but they were trying to get Don Cheney to do it, and Don Cheney refused because they wouldn't pick up his breakfast or something, or wouldn't pay for all the expenses, or it was some kind of story like that from Don, which is why he declined doing America's Most Wanted with John Walsh. Of course, famously John Walsh's son was murdered, abducted and murdered. They don't know who. I think some people believe Otis Toole was responsible for John Walsh's son's murder, but it was never proven. To this day, it's never been proven beyond the shadow of the doubt who was responsible for the death of Adam Walsh, John Walsh's son, which inspired him to go on and do America's Most Wanted. But Cheney apparently was invited to do that TV show and declined because they weren't going to pick up all his expenses. I don't even remember where I got that, but I think it's true. Oh, that'd be great. You're going to get a book with all the stories of the thing, 1952 to 1954. Yes, please do that and go through it all and report back to this show if you find anything. So me and Sapir, of course, will find that very interesting. So will everybody else if you find anything new in there. Of course, that's his finding of the thing, because I think there's so much in the thing that looks Zodiac to me. If you could find like 2 or 3 more, I'd say Game Set Match that he definitely had to have been a fan of that particular comic book series. 52 to 54, pretty good years. Of course, he was already, like Cheney was already, he was born in 34, so he's 18ish. It's 52. He's still, I think he's a senior at Bakersfield High. Then 53 is at Bakersfield Junior College with Paul Avery. Robert Blake impregnated a woman who was a grifter. He married her and they had a daughter. She got shot in their car when they left a restaurant. He was charged and acquitted. Thank you, Anna. It's hard to remember all those. Hey, Anthony, I saw a little blurb coming out of your channel earlier. It was, I'm trying to remember. It was, and you might have to help me, but is the wealth of the top 3 or 4 U.S. billionaires more than the bottom 50% of all Americans or something like that? You had a question like that that you were exploring on your channel, and me just shoot from the hip, I would say that the bottom 50% would still be more net wealth than the top 3 or 4 billionaires, or however many you put in your question. That obviously the answer is on your channel if you wanted to go see the answer, but I did see that come up where you were going to compare like the top. I mean, obviously Elon Musk is the top. Then who else would you have? Would you have maybe Bill Gates And then you have, I don't know, Warren Buffett, maybe Larry Ellison. I'm just trying to think of some of the top American billionaires. Obviously, Musk number one, but I don't know how many you had. But I would still think that even, you know, even the bottom 50% of all of America added up, like, would still be more than that. But maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you got to go over to your channel to find out. You said, am I correct? So I want to know the answer. Oh, I was correct about the answer. So the bottom 50% of all Americans are still worth more than the top 3 billionaires. I guess starting with Musk and whoever else you have is one and two. I don't remember. Like, I don't even remember who the second and the third are anymore. Obviously, Jeff Bezos is still pretty high up, even though I know Bezos got divorced, so that kind of dwindled his net wealth a little bit. But I think Bezos is still up there. I think he's still pretty far up. All the billionaires, 735, are equal to the bottom 50%. Now that's interesting. So I was right. See, I did something right. I feel better about myself. All the billionaires. Anthony has a lot of interesting stuff on his show. And of course, you'll like my shirt, Anthony, because I know you do coat of arms a lot. This is obviously my coat of arms for my family. It has 6 bees on it. Of course, we're Beesons. But I love coat of arms and stuff like that as well. So I like a lot of stuff on your channel. Also, he said all the billionaires, 735, are equal to the bottom 50%. That's interesting. I love facts like that. I really do. Yes, cooking, cooking with gas. Don knew ALA's quirky slang. Of course he did. And could have easily used terms in the letters. Yeah, obviously. Like everything that Allen could do, Cheney could do it. That's why even Cheney said, when he was asked by TV, said, do you think, are you sure? Something like, are you sure that Arthur Lee Allen was Zodiac? And he says, I am something like, I am morally assured it's him. And he said something also along the lines of, if Arthur Lee Allen was not the Zodiac Killer, it had to have been someone who knew him, which was, thank you. That was his answer. If it was not Arthur Lee Allen, it was somebody that had to have known him. You think Don Cheney had any kind of psychological disorders? I think he was a narcissist, and I also think he was a pathological liar. I do. I think he was an absolute pathological liar. I don't know how that would turn into, the crimes or whatever, how that would relate to the crimes, but he's absolutely a pathological liar. And one of the things I always go back to is the story that he told Michael Butterfield. And Michael told me offline. And then I think he also told the story on a French documentary about the Zodiac Killer, that Don said that Arthur Lee Allen told him that he was going to fly a plane into the Sears Tower. And I think that was pre 9/11. But I don't know the year that Michael Butterfield had that phone call with Don Cheney. I think he spoke to him on the phone at least once for sure, maybe twice, but he told him whoppers like that. Like, why would you even bring this up? Like, Arthur Lee Allen told you he was going to fly a plane into the Sears Tower. It was just, he made up some crazy lies. I think that there's a term for that. I can't remember what it was. I think it's borderline personality disorder. I think it's possible that Cheney had borderline personality disorder. And when I think of that, and if you look it up, I think it's pretty close. That's what American Sniper Chris Kyle had. Because here's Chris Kyle, number one sniper, confirmed kills, legend already, the devil of our body. Here's a guy who did not need to lie about anything. He already had the goods. People saw him. People recorded his kill ratio in Afghanistan as a sniper. He was great. Navy SEAL, great guy. But he would make stuff up. I mean, for some bizarre reason, he would make it up. Like being one of the best sniper in American history wasn't enough for him. He had to embellish it more, which was weird. Like, dude, you've got more accomplishments than 99.99% of anybody that ever, military or not, have, but you still need more, which is, I think, called borderline personality disorder. I go to the story about Chris Kyle saying he was on top of the Louisiana Superdome and they were shooting like homeless people looting during Katrina. And of course, we had that famous Jesse Ventura deal. I don't think Ventura handled that right. And I'm a fan of Chris Kyle. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a Kyle descendant from Scotland. That's what I've got some Scottish lineage through the Kyles. So we're cousins down the line. But that thing with Jesse Ventura, Jesse was telling the truth. like Jesse Ventura or not, he was telling the truth. Chris Kyle made it up for whatever reason. I don't know why. He didn't need to, but he did. I think that's what's called borderline personality disorder. Maybe I've got it wrong. I always got the feeling that Don Cheney had a very hidden personality, but I can't tell if he was behind Zodiac. I can tell you there's a lot of circumstantial evidence that he is behind Zodiac, mainly because of his skill sets is where I come from with Don. Even more than just the flat out circumstantial stuff like Paradise. He had a relative with that name. Of course, that came from Reddit, actually, where someone suggested that Paradise, and it wasn't even the DICE, very rare spelling. They suggested that the PARADISE, normal spelling of Paradise, may have been a surname, which we're talking about genealogy again. And then I find out that Don Cheney had a relative with the surname PARADICE, of course, the Zodiac's preferred spelling, which is, as a surname, is 100 times more rare than the DISE spelling as a surname. The DISE surname is very rare. The DIC surname is literally only one family that came from England, migrated to Canada. I don't remember what part of Canada, what exact area of Canada, but then they came down to Denver, Colorado, and spread out from there. One family, meaning like a husband and wife, came over from England to Canada, down into Denver, Colorado in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They get into Denver and they start spreading out. And then Don's relative, Frank Paradise, manages to make his way to Pocatello, Idaho, where he becomes a very well-known architect and designed most of the better looking architectural buildings in a place called Pocatello, Idaho. If you Google that, you'll see a lot of the stuff that he designed. The YouTube channel, this is the Zodiac speaking, that's the name of the original documentary. That's why still blows my mind that the latest documentary has the same name. I mean, it's just confusing. I mean, why would they do that? 10 years from now, if I say this is the Zodiac speaking, what am I talking about? Am I talking about this stuff where the seawaters tell tall tales for an hour, 3 hours, or are we talking about the greatest Zodiac Killer documentary that actually got Brian Hartnell to participate and Mike Migeau? Or are we talking about this seawater nonsense? That's like blasphemous, in my opinion, that you would call some nonsense with the seawaters the same name as such a comprehensive documentary that got Brian Hartnell and Mike Migeau in it. It's just, and all the police officers that were still alive at the time. That Ed Rust was in it. You had, you name it, was in it. Slate was in it. You had you name it. Any of those guys that were still alive were all participated in that documentary. This is the Zodiac speaking. And then you want to call that dribble that Netflix puts out by the same name? I don't know. Strange. Sapir, for me, Paradise C was a game set match. Yeah, Paradise. I mean, but still, for Cheney, I go back to just the raw skill sets. Avid big game hunter, which he lies about when he had the interview with who Corky could announce. He plays that down. He said, when I hunted as a kid, when I grew up in Bakersfield, and I stopped doing that when I grew up, or something like that. You can go look at the interview. The transcript's still up. He basically denies still being an avid big game hunter when he becomes an adult, which I can tell you for a fact is not true. He was an avid big game hunter as long as he could walk. That's a fact. I can prove it. He took long hunts out in the woods. He was a survivalist. He could live in the woods for days, if not weeks, off the land, off of what he shot, killed. He knew how to shoot game. He knew how to prepare game and eat it. Definite survivalist. He was a mountain man, and he downplays that. Why does he downplay that in an interview? Because he doesn't want you to know that, because it's too much about, it looks a little too much closer to Zodiac. There's no other reason for that. Why would you downplay being an avid big game hunter? That's because he's trying to draw it down. The dice spelling, yeah, Cheney has a relative with the last name Paradise, Paradice, through his mother's side, which is Fryer, Fryrear. It looks like Fry Rear, but it's pronounced Fryer. His mother's maiden name was Fryer, like Fry Night. Zodiac was going to go look for victims when? Fry Night. And he was consistent about that. He never said FRI. He always said FRY. He said it consistently at least 3 times when he wrote the letters that came with a 3-part cipher. He said Fry Night, clearly, capital FRY Night. And he used it consistently, never deviated from Fry. Why? Because his mother was Friar. And of course, on his Friar side, David Henry Fryer's first cousin was Mary Paradise, who was married to the architect, Frank Paradise. So in his family, he had Paradises. I mean, with DICE spelling. Look up Frank Paradise, architect. That is Don Cheney's relative. Wait. 2000 not having Voight was a massive blow to Tom's ego. Let's just consider that a gift to all the rest of us that he wasn't in it. Yes. Yeah, I found the Paradise connection for sure, and I found the Avery connection. Somebody tried to deny me that once. It said some loser on the internet had found that Paul Avery had gone to Bakersfield Junior College, but it was total BS. I have a patent on that. Literally, I have a patent on that find that I found that Paul Avery went to Bakersfield Junior College while Don Cheney did. I literally own the paperwork on that. So if anyone else tries to claim that, I'll sue them. I literally have the paperwork for that find. I don't own the Paradise, but I own that too. I found that connection, but I don't need the circumstantial stuff with Don. It's there, but I don't even need it because he had all the skill sets, all of them. I mean, he could draft. He knew celestial navigation. He could navigate sailboats, not just airplanes, because he went to navigation flight school in Harlingen for 2 years. He also knew how to navigate sailboats. Got pictures of that. He was a navigator, a true navigator of boats and planes. So you see the compass rose over Mount Diablo. He had all these skill sets. He was an avid big game hunter. He liked to clean. He would use knives a lot. He preferred carbon steel blades. A buddy of mine was asking me about Zodiac and the blade from Lake Berryessa and how Brian described it, which I'm glad this is coming up now because I'm thinking about it. But Brian described the blade that he saw as maybe as long as 12 inches long, which we really think he overshot that because a 12-inch long blade is very hard to use and kill people with. It'd be very wobbly, no matter what it was made of. A foot blade, it sounds like a bayonet if you get into a foot, and it may have been a bayonet. But we're thinking, something along the lines of 7 inches would have been plenty to stab people to death. You don't need a foot-long blade to kill people. So that was either just Brian just didn't, see it that, get a good view of it, or it was literally like closer to a bayonet. I don't know, but we had a good conversation about that. The motive, I think the motive would be more like something starting out, something small with Alan along the line of a Leopold and Loeb. Of course, these two guys set out to commit the perfect crime and they got caught by making a mistake. I think one of the two killers dropped their glasses by the in a ditch or something, and the police found it, were able to match the glasses up to one of the killers. I think it was kind of like this perfect crime scenario and a masterwork. I think it was more of a just not liking authority. I don't really know. You can't get into somebody's mind to know exactly what the motive would be. I mean, what was the motive of any of these guys? But Zodiac's more interesting because Zodiac wasn't a rapist. Like a guy like Joe D'Angelo was a peeping Tom. He graduates to like a full blown rapist and then rapist murderer. So obviously that was for power. I think in the case of Joe D'Angelo, of course, the Golden State Killer, somebody with a Cheney and an Allen connection is more of a masterwork. I'll show you. I think more of a Leopold and Loeb. That's kind of where I go with it. But honestly, it's just all pure speculation because I can't get into his mind. I do know that he had a terrible, terrible time with authority. He hated authority for whatever reason. I think he didn't even like the authority of Panzarella over him, even though that would have been the best job he could ever dreamt of, is working for an old friend who was making money hand over fist and leaving that job. I just think he hated authority was part of it. That is a good point. Yes, Brian having anxiety and fear may have made the blade look longer. I think my buddy Michael even said as much. And a thread that I was reading about the blade had mentioned that, like, the anxiety and fear made it even more scarier than it really was. But that's why sometimes people describe it as maybe a bayonet, because a foot, that is long. That is a long blade, no matter what it's made of. It's going to have some wobble to it. That would not be a good killing device. A foot long blade is, unless it was made of some kind of titanium futuristic something. I mean, that is just Crocodile Dundee's blade. That's true. Single edge and nowhere near that long. I believe that the knife used at Lake Berryessa by Zodiac was double-sided. It was a double-sided blade. Some of these Civil War blades, like a Confederate Geegard Bowie knife, those had pretty long blades. I think they were like somewhere up to 12 inches. And, they're really for, like during the Civil War, I think a lot of those were more for, trying to hunt animals or fear factor. They weren't necessarily for killing. That's really not their, they looked cool, but they weren't necessarily to kill anybody. Mike, looking at the music sign Coda, which is drawn as a set of crosshairs. There's also something called a Coda DC, means repeat from the beginning on sheet music. Interesting. Jen, if you're still on, I know you know how to read music. Hey, Stevie. That's true. Bayonets are designed for rifles, not hand-to-hand combat. I've just seen people kick around bayonet, and I think the reason why is Brian's 12-inch estimate is why they were maybe thinking a bayonet. And Brian said that the sheath that the knife was in looked like it was made of wood. I mean, to me, I think it was probably leather. I know Don could make leather sheaths for knives. That was one of his specialties, was making leather sheaths for knives that were very well sewn and made of nice leather. It was one of Don's many talents. He had a lot, and that's one of them. But I think that the bayonet thing probably just comes from the sheer length of what's probably an overestimate of the length. 12-inch blades are quite a common size for a kitchen knife. Yes, that's true, bud. That is a common size for a kitchen knife. Could you imagine trying to stab two people in the back with a kitchen knife? I mean, I know people like defend their homes like that. Like if somebody breaks in and they go to like the butcher's block and pull out the kitchen knife that has a long blade, or you'll see it in the movies like Fatal Attraction or something. But in reality, trying to stab somebody in the back with a kitchen knife with a foot blade, I would just think it'd be very wobbly. Like if you hit maybe their spine or something, it would bow. I don't know. I've obviously never done it, but it just seems like an odd length. Smallest machete's 12 inches. So you have an Ontario 12-inch and an 18-inch for camping. Somebody also, I don't know if I guess they speculated that Zodiac used something called a sticking knife, which is something that hunters would use. I don't know. I'm not a hunter at all, so I don't really know. But if there's any hunters on here, if you know what a sticking knife is, please explain what that is and what it's used for, if there's any hunters here. Yeah, for a long blade, it would need to be wider. I don't know if he ever... In fact, hold on. I'm going to read this because I know I pulled it up from my buddy. And this was actually on... What's weird is this... It was written by a guy named Chaucer. I can't even say it. Chaucer. Which, when I hear that name, I think of a guy that used to comment in the DB Cooper drop zone a lot. And I don't know who this guy is. I know some of the Cooper guys probably know exactly who he is. But I associate that name with DB Cooper. It's a DB Cooper commenter, but this was on Blade forums. And I'll read this real quick since we're talking about the blade. It's kind of interesting. He said, "Hello, folks. I'm an investigator on the Zodiac Killer case from the late 1960s and early 1970s in the San Francisco area. I'm hoping you all might be able to shed some light on an aspect of the case. The Zodiac Killer is responsible for 5 murders, along with several letters and codes sent to newspapers. One of those murders took place on September 27th, 1969, on the shores of Lake Berryessa in the Napa Valley region of Northern California. At approximately 6:30 p.m. that day, 2 college students were surprised by a man in a mask as they lay on the banks of the lake, tied up and subsequently stabbed each 6 times. We know that's wrong. Cecilia was stabbed more times than Brian. I don't remember the exact numbers, but Cecilia was definitely stabbed more than Brian. The male student survived his wounds and later offered good eyewitness testimony. The female victim died. Of course, she died 2 days later at Queen of the Valley Hospital in Napa. The question I have is in regards to the knife used. Below is a description of the knife as taken word for word from the police report. If possible, could you read the description and see if you can possibly provide some identification of the knife? And it says in quotes, also stated that he was wearing a knife in a case. Of course, the knife case is called a sheath on belt on his right side near front of his trousers. That's odd because when you see the famous description from Graysmith of Berryessa, it shows the sheath clearly on the killer's left side. And he had a gun holstered on his right because when he approached Brian and Cecilia, the gun was in his right hand and the knife sheath was on his left hip, on the killer's left hip. So maybe he got that wrong. I'm not sure. Knife description appeared to be a long bread knife, 12 inches long blade, 3/4 inches wide, hardwood handle. That's where I'm getting wood sheath from, but this said hardwood handle. That does sound like a kitchen knife. 2 brass rivets holding handling in place, cotton surgical tape wrapped approximately 1 inch around handle of knife. That's interesting. I had forgotten that there was cotton surgical tape wrapped around approximately 1 inch around handle of knife. Knife case possibly made of wood. So at least I'm remembering that correctly. A couple of notes. First, the knife has been described as both a bread knife, a bayonet, and a homemade knife. It also did not have a cross guard, which is crazy because your hand could slip and get it cut. According to the coroner's report, it appeared as if the blade was sharpened on both sides. See, I said it was double-sided. My uninformed opinion is that a bread knife would be ineffective as a stabbing weapon. I agree. So while I know there isn't much to go on, any input or information on your part in regards to this detail in this case would be greatly appreciated. Look forward to hearing your responses. And he didn't get many, but one said the sticking knife is intriguing as there has been a good deal of evidence to suggest that the Zodiac was a hunter and or an outdoorsman. Well, we know who one of those was. In one of his letters, he talked about hunting wild game in the forest. Of course, that was deciphered 408. So I thought that was pretty interesting about what the knife actually was. But I remember the cotton surgical tape taped around, not having a cross guard is very odd. That's a good question. My friend asked me that, Jen. Was it serrated? I don't know. I don't know if you think you would be able to tell from the autopsy of Cecilia at least, or maybe or Brian's wounds, if the knife was serrated or not. That's a great question. I don't know. If anybody knows the answer to that, let me know, because I honestly don't know. I've looked into the knife a little bit, but not to that level. But you think if the knife was serrated, that it would have been pretty obvious to the coroner in Cecilia's report from the coroner's office if the knife had if it was serrated or not, because you would a serrated knife would obviously do a lot more damage, in my opinion. It wouldn't be near as clean. You would be able to tell. Rambo knife is comfortable to hold and could be used with the way the handle is. Not sure exactly what a Rambo knife is. Yeah, serrated would mean it have the little grooves in it, of course. Yes. You see, you agree with me. The wounds would be worse if serrated. Yes, absolutely. The wounds would have been worse if it was serrated. Maybe the surgical tape was there to prevent the killer's hand from slipping forward and getting cut. Absolutely, 100%. But you think he would use a knife that had a cross guard, because then you wouldn't need the surgical tape. I wonder if there was something behind that, or I don't know. Maybe there's something going back to the Mikado, or I'm just pure speculation. But it's the whole knife thing is interesting, and it needs more study. Yes, like a bread knife. That's a good point. Brian would have likely bled out faster if serrated. I agree with that. That's a smart comment, because we know Brian crawled for help over what, 3 or 4 hours. Brian's crawling for help from the murder site down to a spot that's called literally Double Oak Ridge, up to where, of course, who picks him up? None other than Dennis Land picks up Brian Hartnell. And he was literally bleeding out at the time. I think if Brian was out there a couple more hours, he probably would have died. But he carried on and crawled his way from the attack site, I'll call it, got help for Cecilia. You had Deputy Dave Collins there, was able to interview Cecilia before she dies 2 days later, and then gets a height estimate and a little bit her description of the Zodiac before she died. Dave Collins was able to. She was cold, and then this all comes from This Is the Zodiac speaking, of course. The real This Is the Zodiac speaking documentary, not that junker from Netflix, but which wasn't totally bad. It was well done. I'm still just baffled why they were able to still use that name and at least not change it a little bit so we can differentiate. But at least they had those old audio recordings of Don Cheney, who absolutely has a draw in that. I'm sorry. When you listen to Don Cheney's parts in the Netflix, This Is the Zodiac speaking, he sounds like an Okie. Like my friend said, who lives in Oklahoma City, born and raised Oklahoma City, said if I heard Don Cheney speaking like he did in that documentary, I would assume he was from here, meaning Oklahoma, where he was born and raised and still lives. Said if I heard that voice, I would just assume he was local to here. So I always appreciated that. Appreciate it, Charlie. Hartnell is miraculously lucky. Sure, stabs, I think 6 times. Credible survivor story that added much to the evidence. The bizarre persona. Yes, because without Brian, we do not know about the cross circle and the hood. That's what I couldn't remember earlier about Cheney in the interview with who. It was at the Hood River Inn. How can I forget that? It was at the Hood River Inn in Hood River, Oregon. We should see. I just want to look. This is just for fun. I remember that's in Oregon. I think it's near the state line, but I'm going to do distance. It's actually Google's the only one that really does this right. Like you can't, and it doesn't really ever seem to work right on Bing or whatever. But I'm put distance from Benton City, Washington, of course, Washington State, to Hood River, Oregon. And of course, it doesn't work. I don't know why not. I'm sure I typed that in right. I don't think Bing's going to give it to me. Let me try one more time. Maybe Hood River's one word. I can't remember. 2 hours and 18 minutes. So at least we know Don would have driven that far. I'll put that. Hold on. Let me see if I can share that just because I have it up. And I still want to show those things. Don't let me forget, Sepper, about that logo. I will put that up maybe in the group if I can find it later because I couldn't find just Googling around. I couldn't find a good representation of that. What you found on the Fox Theater in Bakersfield. But let me see if I can do this here. Okay, share. Okay, there's the distance. This is how far Don would have driven for that interview, at least 142 miles, 2 hour, 18-minute drive. Pretty good haul just for a breakfast. Which maybe Voight bought him a cup of coffee, but 2 hours and 18 minutes is a good little jog. Just for a little interview down there. He might have had other business in the area, but it was a 2 hour and 18-minute drive to do that interview. Oh, you did? Wow, that's interesting, Anna. Your husband and you and your husband used to eat at the Hood River Inn. That's not a long way from Benton City. Well, that's just what I just pulled up. Less than 200 miles, I think. Yeah, it's whatever I just showed on the screen. Yep, 140 miles. That's it. Portland and yeah, closer to Walla Walla. Walla Walla. I can't. Is there a college there in Walla Walla? It's not a St. Mary's. I can't remember if there's a college there. Isn't there that's fairly well known? Oh, absolutely. He was desperate for attention. No doubt. Yeah, Brian did have to deal with a lot, and he other than giving the interview with Riverside Lawyer magazine, where he pretty much just I I think out after doing the documentary, and he had a bit cameo in the movie Zodiac by David Fincher, he's almost done nothing as far as being interviewed about Zodiac, other than a short interview with Riverside Lawyer magazine, where he pretty much says flat out he doesn't think it was Arthur Lee Allen. So for the Arthur Lee Allen fans, that's a devastating blow that the number one witness and most articulate survivor, and I'm not trying to put Mike Mageau down, no one even knows where Mageau is right now. Of course, he had a brother, Steven. Someone thinks he might be in Canada, or I don't know. Um, Mike Mageau used to live in the area for years after the crimes, but he's gone, and he was living in Las Vegas for a while, where he got caught for a lot of credit card fraud. I don't think anyone knows where Mike Mageau is now. If anyone else knows, let me know. But he's in bad shape, unfortunately. Really hard life, especially after the attack. A lot of lengthy rap sheet. But the fact that Brian Hartnell, who later went on to be a multi-disciplined lawyer who married an anesthesiologist and had two sons, one's in the real estate business, Benjamin, the best prime witness left to the Zodiac killings does not think it was Arthur Lee Allen. Sorry if anybody's an Allen fan, but that's just a blow. That's a tough blow for I think it was an all Arthur Lee Allen deal. Whitman College, thanks, Anthony. But yeah, Brian Hartnell makes it clear in Riverside Lawyer magazine that he does not think Arthur Lee Allen is the guy, and he did see him at the Ace Hardware, and doesn't think he's the guy. Sorry. Were the Zodiac copycats actually copycats? I don't know. Every time I think of copycat, I think of DB Cooper and Ryan, because he did so much work on the DB Cooper copycats. But I don't know. I don't know if they're really. I can't really even think of a Zodiac copycat. There was famous murderers like BTK, who named himself like Dennis Rader. Would he be considered if I had to name a Zodiac copycat right now that I would even call a Zodiac copycat, even though he may not have been copying him, just sounds like him, would be Dennis Rader, BTK, because he named himself. He wanted more attention, and that's what led to his downfall when he took a victory lap and sent in a VHS tape that they were able to uncover, where he was like a president of a church group. He wasn't a minister or anything like that, but he was a president of a church group. And that's how it was a letter that he had deleted. Sorry, not a VHS tape, a floppy disk. If anyone here is old enough to remember what that is, it was, of course, the computer disk that would go in the old Apple IICs and the old Apple computers, and it was flat and called a floppy disk. I know if anybody here is under the age of 40, you're not going to have a clue what I'm talking about. But that's what Dennis Rader sent to the cops with a message kind of saying, haha, I got away with it. Or I don't even know the context, but it was something along those lines. The murders were over, and I don't think he, at least at that point, it was planning anymore, but it was on the anniversary of the time that the crimes had, I think it started. And the cops were able to restore what had been deleted off of that floppy disk. And one of the things they restored was a letter that he had written as the president of this church group in Wichita, Kansas, where BTK was from. And that's how they found Dennis Rader, and that's how he got caught. But if I think of a copycat, I think of Dennis Rader. But I know he's in prison, but if I know his daughter, maybe wrote a book. But his daughter of course, had no idea during the time of the murders it was her father. But I think she may have written a book or something. But I'd love to know if her father was aware of the Zodiac when he did his crime spree, because I can't really think of anybody. We know that Ted Kaczynski did some ciphers, but I think Mark Hewitt likes Ted Kaczynski as Zodiac. But I don't know anybody I could think of offhand would be a Zodiac. A direct copycat. Oh, Jack the Ripper, Zodiac. I'd say Zodiac for sure. Jack the Ripper's way too old. Way too old. Zodiac's old too. It's over half a century, but now you got the Ripper being over a century. So just for the time of it all, I would definitely say I think Zodiac. I think there's still a slight chance something could come up in Zodiac. I don't think the hood's going to be found. I don't think a murder weapon's going to be found. I think the DNA is crap. Honestly, whatever they got off the 78 letter, if it isn't Tosky, it's somebody else. unless they get lucky with the letters. And I know that the Vallejo PD sent in their letters for more advanced DNA testing than what the SFPD crime lab, which was a total joke. The SFPD crime lab, DNA lab is laughing stock, literally. But Vallejo sent their letters to a more credible lab. I don't know if it was like something like on the level of a Parabon, far better, but they weren't able to come up with anything, or it was never reported that anything came up. But that's what happens when you let people come in who claim to be Zodiac Killer experts handle, bare hand your letters before you send them off. So shame on you, Vallejo PD, for letting any yo-yo come off the street and handle your letters with their bare hands. Is what I was told. Not naming any names in a public place here. College Place is a suburb of Walla Walla, Washington. Walla Walla University is located therein. That's been debated a lot. Where did the Zodiac get the idea if you murder someone that the victim is the other slave in the afterlife? That could be a clue as a sick mind made it up. That's been looked into a lot. The Vikings had something like that. Like the old Vikings kind of had a similar concept of slaves in the afterlife. I've heard that in not Buddha, a couple other cultures or something similar. There's one story of a guy that was a Mormon who claimed that they believed that, but I've never been able to find that in Mormonism. And I even have a friend that's a Mormon that said they'd never heard of it, but there was a story of a guy that was a Mormon that said that that was in World War II, and they were going off to battle, and he says, "Well, I know I'm going to go to hell," or whatever Mormons believe in hell. I don't know if they even use that word hell, but that since he killed people, he was automatically going to go to the bad place, we'll call it, and that they kind of had this something similar to save slaves in the afterlife, but I've never seen that again, and I've never found it online or anywhere else other than that weird story about one in that World War II story. But I think Vikings have something like that. But I think he just made it up in his sick mind, honestly. I think you're right. Sure, Sean, any day. I'm surprised I found it before you. I was excited that I got to tell you about it because I know you as a graphic artist always had some interest in whether or not he either free-handed that skeleton or got it from somewhere else. And I knew you were also interested to see if somebody would ever find the source. But I didn't know until Druser sent me the newspaper clipping that even the news had just speculated that he took it from a kid's Christmas card and just got it that way. But there it is, no bones about it. That's where the skeleton comes from, and he just cut it from there and pasted it in the other one with the skeleton that came with the card. So there's your second skeleton. The guy found it. I mean, good job. But I knew you'd be interested in that, so I thought I felt kind of special that I got to tell you about it and send you the link because I know that's something you and I talked about quite a bit. If you're talking about, I bet you money he knew all about Zodiac and the other killers too. If you're talking about Raider, that would be interesting. I'd love to know. He probably did, and I don't know. Oh yeah, absolutely. New York Zodiac. You're right about that. Zeta. Shoot, what was his first name? Zeta was his last name, but yeah, but he used zip guns. Obviously, yes. Good point, Mike. That is an obvious copycat. Eddie Zeta, New York Zodiac, who used zip guns and got caught pretty quickly. Eddie Zeta was just an absolute loser, though. But yeah, he was inspired by the Zodiac. No doubt a copycat. You're right. He is the most obvious copycat is Eddie Zeta, the New York Zodiac killer. And this guy was an absolute loser. The military didn't want him. He tried to get into the military. He was just Eddie Zeta was a complete punk. I mean, there's no other way around it. He was not near as smart as the Zodiac. And of course he got caught. I can't remember what happened. He got some kind of beef with his sister's boyfriend. He got into a beef with, and the cops got called out, and then it all escalated. I think that's what Eddie Zeta's downfall was, and that's how he got caught. Was some kind of fight that ensued between him and the sister's boyfriend. Maybe he shot at him. I don't think he killed him, but it was some kind of a blow up with the boyfriend. But yeah, Great point, Mike. Mike wins the Gold Seal Award today for coming up with that. I totally skipped my mind. New York Zodiac is absolutely copycat. Eddie Zeta. BTK was twisted, man. He was a sick piece of garbage. IMO, he'd seen Zodiac's competition, not something to copy. Zodiac is likely rotting under the ground or dust in a coffee jar. Ripper is solved. Read Brew Robinson's book. They all love Jack. Ned, if you're listening, check this one out because I know Ned still does a lot of Jack the Ripper stuff. There's another guy I follow that's really into Ripper that wrote a book. I'm trying to remember this dude's name, but a fairly young guy that's really into it. He'd be a good guest for Ned or anybody that still covers Ripper like Ned does. Killed hundreds, MOs including babies, big time cover up. No, I never heard of the book, but Brew Robinson's They All Love Jack, according to Fasting Star, is the name of that book. So check it out. Let me go through some of these. Son of Sam seemed to copy him some. Shooting young adults on dates, pistol up close to a car. Good point. Just a thought. Yeah, they call him what the 44 caliber killer before he got named Son of Sam. Interesting that both Cooper and Zodiac have circumstantial ties to 1950s comic books. Yeah, I think the Dan Cooper comic was printed in the 1950s out of it was Franco-Belgian. It was a Franco-Belgian comic that may have been available in Canada because it was written in French, being Franco-Belgian. But I'm not a big fan of D.B. Cooper taking his name from the Dan Cooper comic. I know there's a lot of guys that are, but I'm just. You remember Ryan Burns found a Dan Cooper in something called Air Trails. I always want to call it Tales, but I think it's a magazine. It was called Air Trails that came out in I think 1938 that had a story in it about a parachutist named Dan Cooper that was an American. So not as widely distributed as the Franco-Belgian Frank Weisberg Dan Cooper comic, but there was a story of a Dan Cooper in that Ryan found that was really interesting. Yeah, he wasn't a preacher, but he was heavily involved in his church, which shows you, you don't ever know who you're dealing with. You know who you're dealing with. They could claim to be whatever. They could be the preacher, they could be the preacher's son, they could be whoever, and turn on you just like that. You just don't know. Homicides could almost be dated back to Jack the Ripper's last canonical victim. There's some interesting stuff out there about Jack the Ripper and the homicides. Yeah, there's so many books on the Ripper. I'm late to the game. I'm interested in Ripper, but I'm really late to the game. I'd have to start out at ground zero. I think Ryan found out and some of the other guys bought them. They the sunglasses, and they found them in magazines back then. And I don't know if they figured that out from reading the FBI 302s. And Ryan had bought some of these glasses, and I know you can find them wearing them if you go to DB Cooper Sleuth channel, where Ryan's wearing them. And I think that's what he thinks for sure were the ones that Cooper wore. And they look a bit like wraparounds. They really do. They look like more modern wraparound sunglasses. And Ryan, I think John Limbach and maybe Chris Cunningham all bought a pair. I didn't, you guys were more hardcore than me. Y'all all bought a pair of the sunglasses, but I'll try to find those. But I know at some point that they, for some reason, really believe that's the ones that Cooper was wearing. And I don't know if that was just what was available at the time or how Ryan and company figured that out. Oh, Karen, you said yes to the Santa Rosa question. So you'd have to hit me later, Karen, that, oh gosh. Maiden name. Hit me with the maiden name, Karen, and then we'll get going. Cause I know there's only one other guy that sometimes tunes into this show and he'll know this answer, but, what is your maiden name? What is your maiden name? And if that comes up, you'll have my attention. You'll have my attention for the most part. And if you say it, then I might think you might be the other guy on here that would know it. But I think only very few people are going to know that answer is what is your maiden name or what is your, or I'll take your maiden name or your middle name or both because I know them both. I know your maiden name if you are the Karen Allen, of course, Arthur Lee Allen's sister-in-law. Remember Don Cheney came on the show. Remember that, everybody? That was so fun. We didn't even use a spirit box, but Don came on the show after death and he answered a lot of interesting questions. And I can't remember what we arrived at, but it was a lot of fun. And I think we actually got the football down the field a little bit with that interview. But I'll take either one, Karen. I'll take either maiden name or middle name or both. And then we're off to the races because that's something you're not going to be able to go Google really quick. Maybe one of them you could. I don't know. I take that back. I don't know. Google's pretty good. Would that be? I don't know. I think both of those would be actually kind of hard to Google. Either Karen's maiden name or Karen's middle name, which are two different names, obviously. So if one of those pops up, you might have my attention. The Idaho crime. Are you talking about the oh shoot, Koberger? Is that who you're talking about? Brian Koberger? The recent crime where the students were killed a couple, God, that's been like what, 2 years now, where Brian Koberger killed the college students at Idaho State. Because my good friend is a professor there. My very good friend is a professor at that very college where the students were murdered. I never asked her if they were her students or not. I never even brought it up to her, and she's a good friend. I guess I could, but I never have. But a good friend of mine is a professor and was teaching at the time that the kids were killed. She's more in the sciences, and I don't know if any of the students that were murdered were. Of course, the gentleman and the two girls. So there's 3 victims, I believe. It's been a while since the Idaho crimes. Of course, that's Brian Koberger was the prime suspect in the Idaho murders. But when I hear Idaho murders, I think of the school. But maybe I'll ask her because my good friend is, like I said, is a professor, tenured professor at that very college where they were murdered. Yeah, Anna, you come up with a lot of good stuff. You always have. Karen Allen's middle name is obviously Danger. Koberger is now in Boise, our state capital. I didn't know you were in Idaho. I don't know. I knew you were on the West Coast, but I didn't know you were in Idaho. Koberger is now in Boise, our state capital. The jury will be selected from Ada County. No, but I'll ask my friend if she knew any of the victims. I just never did it, and I saw her in person not long ago. And some of you might be able to figure out which friend I'm talking about, which is fine. I don't mind. Her name's Karen Humes, Dr. Karen Humes, who's brilliant, by the way. Very smart lady. Was a former NASA scientist, tracked spacecraft for NASA. So, pretty smart woman. Koberger's down in Boise. Jury be selected from Ada County. Koberger's charged with stabbing 3 females and 1 male. So I was right. My memory, someone holding up. The male was a natural triplet, one of 3 brothers. I knew he had a big family out in Idaho. Good looking kid. But I didn't remember that about him being a natural triplet. I knew he had brothers and sisters, but I did not know that about being the natural triplet. Didn't know that at all, but I wonder if Karen knew any of these. I wonder if any of them ever had her for, she teaches like satellite mapping and stuff, so very scientific. I don't know if these students were had any of the sciences or if they were more like English majors or not. A lot of county only has about 40K population. Most of them believe Koberger was guilty. Everybody believes. How could Koberger not be guilty is my question. Only about 20K for the jury pool, and I don't know how to pronounce that, but I know it's Native American. Lochtaw County. Of course, I know Patty could pronounce it being Native American. But I'll ask her. I'll ask Karen if she knew. Just so we know. Okay, Karen. Nothing from Karen. She knows Santa Rosa, but you don't know your maiden name and you don't know your middle name. So we're drying out here. Of course, the one guy that knows should drop it in, but if he dropped it in under his own name, I would know it was him. So there you go. He'd have to drop it in under Karen Allen for it to get my attention. So if Karen Allen drops in one of the two names, you're gonna have my full undivided attention if you know either of those two names. So you should at least try to take a guess at it, because you could just like say something out of the blue and be right, and then I'd be like, my eyes would like pop out of my head or something. I can't remember what Ryan called them, but they were kind of like the Ray-Ban Bola Ramos. Yeah, they look kind of like wraparounds, and I know Ryan knows what the hell they are, but Ryan's not listening about the Zodiac. He only carries, he's 24/7 DB Cooper. Knows a little bit about Zodiac, but I doubt Ryan's on right now. I'd have to ask him, but he knows all about the sunglasses, of course. What's up with Kohlberger, scholar, killer? Well, he was a scholar. Kohlberger was studying criminal justice, right, Anna? He was studying the actual stuff. I mean, like, he was interested in crime as doing the crime is like research or something. Like, he had written on a few message boards about killing people and questioning them, and it was traced to the real Brian Kohlberger, and he was I think he was either getting his master's or his PhD. I don't know which, but I think he already had his undergrad from somewhere in Pennsylvania. He's from Pennsylvania. He's from near the Poconos, which is weird because I was talking to somebody else for a good 30 minutes today about the Poconos, which has nothing to do with Zodiac, by the way. But it's odd because Brian Kohlberger is from Pennsylvania, not from Idaho. He is from Pennsylvania, from the Poconos. He may write his doctoral. So, okay, wow. The way you see it, he may write his doctoral dissertation from death row. That is interesting. So, yes, he's a scholar. Until tomorrow, you have your answer. He was a scholar. I think he already had his master's, not from maybe that was from Idaho State, and then his undergrad was from that school in Pennsylvania. But I know he's from the Poconos in Pennsylvania, is where he's born and raised, where some people that knew him there that grew up with him, he could already tell that the guy was off, Kohlberger was a PhD candidate in criminal justice. Thank you. My memory's holding up. In your opinion, if guilty, maybe the crime was a doctoral level crime, except he left DNA behind on a knife sheath. Yes, and they quickly figured that out. Gotta say that Ted Braden is quite an interesting guy, and I can't help but admire his abilities. Yeah, Ted Braden only comes along once in a lifetime, really, with those kind of abilities, where even a guy like Billy Waugh is aware of his ability, where a guy like Billy Waugh, who's the godfather of special forces, is like, we're over here, like, I'm like one of the greatest badasses that ever lived. I'm Billy Waugh. I'm the godfather of U.S. special forces. I train people how to jump at night by throwing them out of helicopters. He said, but this guy, Ted Braden, was like over here, like, he's different. That even us, like, we're the greatest badasses ever, but this dude was on a whole nother level of weird, I mean, at age 16, he's in World War II. Ted Braden is sneaking out to the German listening post, like getting up close to the German soldiers as they communicate on his own, sneaking out, like not having any permission to get closer to the German soldiers at age 16. This guy had zero fear of death, no fear of death whatsoever. I mean, even these other Saw guys didn't want to immediately die in 5 seconds. They were extremely brave men, but they didn't want to die that quick. But Braden had no fear of death. Death did not come. Death was not in, whatever. Oh, I'm going to die when I jump out of this plane. So what? I mean, that was literally Ted Braden. He had zero fear of death. He would have not been nervous one iota. Of course, that's a hallmark of DB Cooper, is that he was not nervous. Every jumper I know said they would have been scared shitless doing that jump. Definitely survivable, but doing it at night like that, the weather wasn't that bad, but it was dark. It was nighttime. That's the game changer with DB Cooper. It was nighttime with cloud cover, no definitive drop zone. you got to be out of your mind to do a jump like that, or not really high level of something going wrong. The shroud line's getting twisted, spinning out because of the weight of the money, all sorts of things to consider. He'd obviously been skydiving before. I think the consensus now, even among all the Vortex, is this is someone that at least had a good number of dives, skydives under their belt. But Braden was special. I mean, he was just born without some whatever mechanism that creates fear in your mind was absent when this dude was born. I mean, he was a little warped by, I think, his stepfather, but he was just born without fear, literally. Kohlberger lost a lot of weight. Yes, I forgot that about the heroin. He wrote at the time that he felt like he was dead meat and he felt no emotions. Some other mental stuff. Yeah, that's when he was living in Pennsylvania. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, why would he get so careless? And then he got caught on camera. And wasn't he caught on, he was caught on surveillance camera, I think, driving around at 3 in the morning or wherever before the DoorDash showed up to the house. I mean, he really, if the guy really wasn't that smart, sorry. I mean, he made multiple mistakes, leaves his DNA, his car caught on tape driving around the house where the students lived. I mean, the dude, I'm sorry, Brian Kohlberg's an idiot. I mean, PhD candidate or not, the guy's a dumbass. I mean, he really didn't plan that out too well. Just a fool. Just a fool. But it's his brain that is unsolvable. Yeah. Yeah, his brain is yeah. I agree with your statement. Yeah, if anybody can pull it off, it's likely Braden. And I understand that some MacVSogs don't really like being associated with a federal air piracy now. But too late for that. I've already talked to too many of them that believe it's him. Diligent scholar destroys life. Like, why? Yeah. Yeah, he was by all accounts, he was a diligent scholar. And then he just destroys his life by just committing this sloppy crime. It wasn't like he pulls off a Zodiac level crime. He's just sloppy as hell. He leaves DNA. He gets in some scuffle with them. He could have woken up and, if they put up any kind of a defense, I think if one more guy is in the house, remember the one couple never even woke up. Isn't that weird? I think it was another couple. Maybe they were dating, but they didn't even wake up during these attacks, which is odd. You think they would have been screaming and yelling in a knife attack? Obviously Kohlberger was using a knife, not a gun. The whole thing is weird to me. But I am going to ask my friend if she knew any of the victims. Rare genetic disorder that causes. Oh, that's interesting. I can't pronounce that. Erbach with disease, a rare genetic disorder that causes brain damage that can reduce or eliminate a person's ability to feel fear. I don't know. I think he had that. He was not afraid of death. He'd pull a ripcord under 1,000 feet, like just for the fun of it, and did not care. I mean, jumping out of an airplane with no helmet or gloves meant nothing to Ted Braden. I mean, he had no fear of death, but always had this way of surviving. That's what Dan Duncan wrote about him. Like, he had zero fear of death, but always comes out living, like for whatever reason, it was just so good. Entire divisions of airborne Rangers jumped into France under fire at night. So we had a full ton of, oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt. We had the bravest of the brave, man. I'm a fan of airborne, to say the least. Especially the 101st and the 82nd, the big boys. Of course, a lot of the paratrooper regiments were under the 101st Airborne. Ted was in the 501st Parachute Infantry Battalion, 501st Paratrooper Infantry Regiment, 2nd Battalion. Surprised I can remember that. He was in the under the guides of the 101st Screaming Eagles, but he was in the 501st Paratrooper Infantry Regiment, 2nd Battalion, which was Company E, which was also, all Company E's were Easy Company, like Band of Brothers, but Braden was Company E, so he was an Easy Company guy. but he was not in Band of Brothers. Braden was not portrayed in Band of Brothers, unfortunately, but that was I think Band of Brothers was a 506, maybe. Correct me, anybody who wants to that knows Band of Brothers, but Band of Brothers is the last TV show I watched every episode of, and that was 20 years ago now. That show, I never even watched an episode of Game of Thrones, and that's something that would have appealed to me, but I just never found the time to sit there and watch it. I guess I was busy doing this stuff or recovering from a bad day at work. But that's seriously, Band of Brothers was the last show I watched every episode of. And I did watch the Pacific as well, but that just wasn't near as good as the Europe and Band of Brothers. I just loved it. I mean, those guys were fantastic. The way it was done, of course, that Spielberg and Hanks produced that. Damian Lewis was great in it. Of course, Damian Lewis is British. I mean, he's British, talk like this from Britain, and he has no accent at all in Band of Brothers. So he thought maybe he won't get the part, but they said, "Hey, read it without an accent or whatever." When he did it for Spielberg or whatever, and he reads it with an I don't know, I guess like for a better word, American accent, and he got the part. But that's when you talk about actors changing their accents for roles. I think of Damian Lewis in Band of Brothers, because go listen to him on a talk show, and he's like, "Is British is Mick Jagger," and then watch Band of Brothers, where he's just like was born American. He's just that good of an actor. And of course, Ron Lewis was good. Two females in separate bedrooms were not attacked. Okay, it was two females. Thank you for correcting me. One of them is the witness who probably saw Koberger leaving the house, but in your opinion, her testimony is peculiar. Man, that is interesting. Might have to do a show on that. That type of psychopath often becomes a hero, kind of like OJ. Man, now y'all got me really thinking. You guys are good. You really are. Everybody tonight has just made very interesting and intelligent comments. But I will ask my friend Anna just to see if she knew any of them personally, if she had any, just her being a professor there, she might have heard some inside scoop that might be interesting to people that follow the Idaho murder case, seeing that she was a professor there at the time of the murders. And I saw her in person, obviously, and I never said. I mean, we're talking about other things. I never said, "Hey, you're from that." I never asked her about it, but I will. Appreciate you. Let me put this back up because I'm rounding it up. Yes, that was the great find. Good job, sir, who found that. Again, big shout out to Druzer. Druzer always doing great work, obviously. Stole that from Richard Grinnell, zodiacciphers.com. Zodcast is calling, and tune in next week. I'm going to definitely do more on that. And Karen, if you come up with your middle name or your maiden name, we are all good. Let me put the New Year's jam back up, and I'll probably take that off, but make sure I didn't miss something. Idaho Killer always makes me think of Bundy. Yeah, that's a good. I agree with you there, Mike. Yeah, you know what? That's a great idea, Patty. I will email her this week and see how that goes. I think I'd really get along with Pat Brown. I really agree with. I haven't watched all of her stuff, but the stuff I've seen of her, I really am in tune with where she goes with all of her stuff. Voice of Arthur from Red Dead Redemption 2 has an Irish accent in real life, but can be put on a great Southern SQSA accent. Yeah, I love it when those actors are so good they can do that. That's why I like him so much in Band of Brothers. Damian Lewis. Bundy primary operating in Washington, Oregon, California, Colorado. Yeah, Bundy. That's the first time. Like, why would Don Cheney drive all the way from Pomona to commit 3 crimes? And my answer is 2 words. Ted Bundy. Next. Yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. I might do something New Year's. If there isn't too many Roger Clark's is the GOAT. If there's not too much fireworks in the background, which we think we can get over, we'll do that. Thank you. Hey, Paprika. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Any Zodiac suspect that was a welder on Mare Island. I don't know. I think there's several connections to Mare Island because it's so many people that lived in Vallejo worked on Mare Island. That wouldn't be hard to track down a connection to a welder. But I'd love to know where you're going with that because I remember you commenting before and you made a lot of intelligent comments. I'd have to look that up. I can't think of one offhand, a welder offhand at Mare Island. Yes. Oh my gosh, what a great idea. Now I'm going to be up all night thinking about this. Why'd you have to say that? Need a Vietnam miniseries like Band of Brothers in the Pacific about Vietnam. Oh my gosh. Man, you must know me. Did I tell you about the Vietnam vet I met the other day? It was great, man. He just had scars from the Agent Orange. I really want to get him to do like hey, Patrick, I really want to get him to sit down and do like an interview. He was a Marine. I can't remember. I think 7th Division, 5th Marines. I might have screwed that up, but I think I should. I think if you follow me on Facebook, I put a picture up of him on Facebook. How good is Don Cheney with tools and welding? I would say that would be no problem for him. He liked to sharpen his own knives. He preferred carbon steel blades. He used his own whetstones to sharpen his own blades. He made his own sheaths by hand and sewed them by hand. Tools, no problem. He had several tools. He had welders, sanders. He could do civil engineering like you couldn't believe. Building arcs, flowing arcs of flowers, staircases. When his washing machine would break, he would take it apart and fix it immediately himself. He wouldn't call the Maytag man, I can tell you that. He opened it up himself. I can prove this, and fix it himself. He did not call Don Cheney did not call the repairman. He was a mechanical engineer. He did it himself. I'd say he could probably weld with no problem at all. I bet you I could even prove it. Yeah, he was a master of tools, all tools, planers, anything, wood, metal, grinding metal, plans with metal, making metal parts. He could do anything with his hands, anything, blades, parts, wood, you name it, he could do it. He was a master of tools, an absolute master. That is your answer to that. No one better, that good. Karen Shane Allen. Oh man, we'll leave it on that one. Obviously, that's wrong, but that's hilarious, man. Everybody have a happy New Year. I'll probably try to do an upload for New Year's. Suspect car Berryessa was said to have mismatched tires. Yes, I think that may have been a house observation, but I'm not sure. Vietnam War, I agree. You have family who died in it. Yeah, I am fascinated by Vietnam. Even more so, like if I could do anything on Vietnam and I started to write a fictional book based on true stories about Vietnam, and it's not MacV Sog at all. I don't even want it to be special forces. I like grunts, man, and I like grunt stories. That's what I wanted to focus on. Like there was something on YouTube about two guys that one of them was a writer, so that really hit home with me. And he went over to Vietnam and saw a lot of combat. I think he was drafted. I can't remember. And his buddy might have joined up to join him. And one of them gets killed. I can't remember the whole deal, but I wanted to kind of base it on that. But I'm fascinated by Vietnam and all that. Your uncle, a retired Australian Army colonel, served in Vietnam. That's super cool. Speaking of that, Tony Donnelly, if you're watching, thank you for the Christmas card. Our favorite Vietnam vet of the show. Of course, he was a Vietnam combat medic. Shout out to you, Tony. Send me an email if you can. I did get your Christmas card from you and your lady friend. I don't think you got married. I think it's your lady friend that you and her sent it out together. It's a couple, which was very nice. I did get the card, so I hopefully you hear this that I got it, and I'll email you as well. But everybody have a good week and have a happy New Year.